That's really where we're going to see that conspiracy. Remember, this is conspiracy to commit murder, so they have to show that there's a meeting of the minds.
She's not charged with murder itself.
Conspiracy to commit murder, which would put her equally as culpable for the murder if she's convicted. That's really important because she's basically on the hook for the murder of Jennifer. And Jesse, I think where the defense is going to attack this, and you laid it out, this is the evidence, is that Michelle Troconis is never seen actually throwing away the bags. In her police interviews, she says she didn't know what was in them. She said that she thought they were debris from one of Fotis' properties. She said that Fotis' lawyer, because he was going through this bitter divorce, told them to document their activities in connection with his divorce proceeding, which really doesn't make a lot of sense when you're talking about such a detailed account and a timeline of the day Jennifer goes missing. So all of this together, it is a circumstantial case.
For a while. So last year, the charges were dropped when a special prosecutor came into the case. And then you have fresh eyes on all of the investigation and all of the evidence that had been collected. At that time, they dropped the charges without prejudice. That means they could be revived at any time. Central to that decision was whether or not the gun Alec Baldwin was holding that caused this tragic occurrence had been manipulated or altered prior to the time it was on set. The prosecutor said, we have to investigate this. Now, in the fall, it came to light that there was a forensic expert report generated by the prosecution that found it could only have been discharged if he pulled the trigger. Fast forward, this case goes to grand jury, and now the charges are viable again, and we're on the path towards trial. So that's the path that this case took. This case is seeking to hold Jennifer and James Crumbley responsible for the acts of Ethan, involuntary manslaughter. What does that mean? It's based on both acts and omissions, their failure to provide him with mental health services, their failure to intervene. The standard is that there was a willful disregard for information that they knew or should have known that he was dangerous, that he had a propensity for violence, and their failures to take action on that front. It's a very different legal theory than we've seen in the past relating to parents being held responsible for the acts of their kids. Usually, it's a reckless endangerment charge. They're not being held responsible for the actual deaths. Child neglect. Those are the legal theories we've seen before. But to hold them responsible for the actual deaths of these 4 victims, that is a very, very different legal theory.
So the judge was very clear that this is a very, very narrow inquiry. And the inquiry relates directly to what did Becky Hill say to any of these individual jurors? So the first is, did she have communications with them? What were the nature of those communications? Did those communications relate to the trial? And then the questions could go further than that, depending on the responses. You know, if a juror says, I never had a communication with her outside of her saying good morning, well, then the inquiry might be able to stop there. So it's really going to be dependent. But it's really important to realize that there are very strict limitations on how far the questioning can go. And that's because every state and the federal law has a rule that says in questioning a verdict or the veracity of a verdict, you can't get into juror deliberations. Jurors have to be free to deliberate in that jury room. So the judge is not going to ask questions about the actual deliberations. It's going to relate directly to anything said by Becky Hill and determination of whether that was improper. Clearly, they felt the need to punish. This was a huge part of the plaintiff's case, that despite being the statements being deemed defamatory, he continued to go out there and make comments about E. Jean Carroll. In their opening statements, they had pointed to like 81 comments that had been made at that time just relating to the case. And so clearly the message was, this needs to be stopped. This is deterrent. And plaintiff said the only way to get Donald Trump to stop is to hit him where it hurts, and that's in the wallet. So over $60 million, that is a huge punitive damages award. This will go through the appeals process. It's likely that he won't be paying anything until that process is underway and there's a final judgment on the matter. So she may see some money someday, but the appeals process can be a bit of a slow one. And I'm sure he'll be challenging this damages award. Absolutely. It's a tremendous number.